I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak at your conference. I'm afraid that during the pandemic, I have to present my talk virtually. The pandemic has exposed the inadequacy of the medical model and the current mental health system. So the main thrust of my talk today is to suggest to you that there is a better way to cope with the mental health crisis and promote mental health. Now, here's a picture. You can see that the medical model is just a surface. If you dig deeper, wow, you can see all the horrible stuff. Discrimination, poverty, inequity, and all the dark side of life hidden under the unconsciousness. So I'm suggesting that today we are facing many existential crises. The pandemic, the climate change, the widening polarization, massive violence, nuclear war, and the abuse of digital power. There's all kinds of horrors and problems challenge the very human existence and the integrity of individuals. So therefore, I'm proposing that the antidote to our existential crisis is meaning of self-transcendence. Now, another way to look at our human problem is the myth of Sisyphus. Here's a guy who kept on pushing the rock uphill only to find it rolling backward just before he reached the top. So in other words, he constantly fought an uphill battle, but was never able to reach the top. That seems to describe our problem. We want success, we want happiness, we want power. Whatever we're seeking, we're never satisfied. We're never able to get to the top. So this picture provides a challenge for us. What sustained him? What was going through his mind? Maybe we can learn something from him so that we could be happy in spite of the absurdity of life. Now, existential anxiety is an inescapable part of human experience. No one is immune from it. And many of the symptoms of existential anxiety stem from our unconscious mind. The four primary sources of existential anxiety, according to Yalom, is meaninglessness, loneliness, fear of death, and fear of the freedom of making wrong choices. Now, existential suffering needs existential competency, not CBT, not medication. It's only we need self-transcendence, we need existential competency in order to resolve existential suffering. Now, the second point I want to talk about is, given this problem, we need to reformulate clinical psychology and mental health in view of existential suffering. Now, here's a challenge. Mental illness is not a brain disease. Mental illness is not just dysfunctional thinking. Primarily, we are like water, fish out of water. Primarily, our mental health problem is due to our failure to meet our basic mental health needs for relationship, for meaning, for spiritual faith. These three ingredients, important ingredients, have been replaced by the shallow materialistic pursuits of pleasure, power, celebrity status. All this superficial stuff cannot satisfy the basic human need for mental health and happiness. Okay. So here is a more elaborate picture of the golden triangle of our need for faith, hope, and love. Hope means that we have a sense of agency to achieve our life's mission or calling. Love means compassion, kindness, not just intimate love, but intimate love for humanity, being part of the human society. Now, this golden triangle is the answer to our mental health needs. Another way to put it is that we need to switch from the horizontal dimension to the vertical dimension. Okay. You will ask, how can we lead a good life when bad things are happening? The answer is meaning seeking, meaning fulfillment. Okay. Meaning lacking, meaning or the lack of it is the key both to suffering and to happiness. So here, if we pursue meaning, if we succeed, then we have an ideal life. If we do not do too well in this world, like by golf, we still live a meaningful life. So if we switch to meaning, there is a no-lose situation. On the other hand, if we pursue materialistic, shallow happiness, the best we get is shallow life. The alternative is the waste life. It's a no-win situation. Above, in the vertical, when we switch to the vertical dimension, pursue depths, there's a no-lose situation. Horizontally, live a shallow life, a two-dimensional life, there's no win. You know, another way of looking at the present mental health system. Okay. At present, it should be switched. At present, we have clinical psychology. We have extreme psychology, of existential psychology. Talk about the dark side. Here talk about the disorders, dysfunctioning. And here the positive psychology, they talk about human strength, happiness. The three disciplines are separate. The overlapping area, the best spot, is where we find mental health, is where we find a cure for mental illness. That's why the reformulation insists that it's important that we enlarge the middle part, that's the common ground, that the integration involving the dark side and the bright side. So the future of mental health, of clinical psychology, is this spot, okay, the large part. So here, this is from Buddha's perspective, to indicate that the pursuit of happiness could backfire, could be bad for us, okay? Most stuff to make us happy, sorry for the typo, to make us happy is often not good for us. Salty, sweet and salty food are bad for our health. Too much food, too much drink, too much pleasure can do us harm. Desire for worldly happiness often leads to frustration, anxiety, and suffering. So that's why I come to Buddhist psychology is your ability to be free from all this inevitable suffering that make you happy. Only a free person can be happy. You're happy to the extent you're able to free from your anxiety, from your depression, from your frustration and anger. So they're talking about the same thing as I do. The happy, we're talking about a two-factor theory of happiness. Happiness is not just doing things to make you happy, but freeing yourself to make you unhappy. That makes sense to you? Here talk again about the paradoxical effect of happiness. We must hurt in order to grow. No pain, no gain. We must fail in order to succeed, to know. We must lose in order to gain. These are some lessons of life intelligence that we can only learn from suffering and pain. So here is a golden triangle that accompany, here the iron triangle that accompany the golden triangle. The iron triangle says that we need courage, essential courage, essential acceptance, and transcendence. The courage to face the horrors of human existence. The courage to accept reality. The courage to rise above suffering. So this existential triangle, the iron triangle, make it possible for us to overcome suffering. As a result, we'll have positive, strong positive mental health, not just happiness. You have this attitude, you create more miracles than wonder drugs. So we're saying the attitude is more important than aptitude. Meditation is more important than medication. Courage is more important than seeking escape and avoidance. Compassion is more important than competition. So that requires a radical change of attitude and mindset. The third point I want to talk about is the paradigm of existential psychology. So when you integrate existential psychology and clinical psychology with psychology, what you get is existential psychology. Right? So here is the main point. According to this new paradigm, Suffering is not something to be avoided. Why? Because suffering is essential for happiness and flourishing. Life is always a mixture of good and bad, happiness, suffering. Self-transcendence or meaning is a process of integrating happiness and suffering. Okay? It's through the integrating of two opposites we can find the middle way. Okay? So that's why Frankl says that you want success, if you want self-actualization, these are side effects, not the life goal, but the side effect of a life goal of seeking self-transcendence. Now, here is another way I'll show you. It is a complicated dual system model to integrate suffering and happiness. During normal conditions, we use the approach system, which can be defined in pure, we'll talk about later on. Approach system will generate meaning, happiness. But when we're threatened by noxious stimuli, or when things are going bad, we need both approach and avoidance. Avoidance system means that we avoid unnecessary suffering. We're vigilant to avoid unnecessary suffering. We try to ensure safety and survival, but we also transcend them, but we also need to pursue happiness and personal growth. Approach and avoidance together create mental health. So that there are several functions of suffering. First of all, suffering triggers the search for meaning. Could be a better alternative than addiction, aggression, or suicide. Second, suffering motivates us to voluntarily embrace suffering in order to become our best, in order to make our suffering meaningful and worthwhile. Frankl says that if you're suffering if there's a meaning for your suffering, suffering is no longer suffering. Thirdly, suffering teaches us how to manage hardship, how to manage your emotion, how to be free from unnecessary anxiety, so that we can have much greater capacity to be happy. So in sum, suffering serves several protective and transformative functions. A diagnostic tells you something wrong in your life. Curative tells that you change. You need to get healing. Redemptive tells that you need to be a better person. You need to redeem your bad deeds. You need to redeem yourself. So the most touching movie and literature are stories of redemption. How people discover their past mistake, how they regret what so they live life the second time, as Frankl said, as if the first time they have lived wrongly. Okay. So there are three basic tenets of existential parapsychology. First, polarity. All things in nature exist in opposites. Okay, whether it's physics, chemistry, biology, or psychology. Second, transcendence is a process to rise above the polarity. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or yin-yang, yin-yang can integrate through transcendence. The result is balance and harmony. Through a process of balance and harmony, you produce inner peace and well-being And this is a picture of mature happiness. Integrate yin yang, integrate self and others, take into account spiritual dimension, physical dimension, social dimension, and personal dimension. And you need purpose, practical wisdom of life intelligence, and courage. That's how you have mature happiness or chironic happiness. So now we know the theoretical part about existential parapsychology. The intervention is called integrative meaning therapy. Okay? Yeah. Integrative meaning therapy is to transform tragedy into triumph. Reframe it into a larger or more meaningful story. For example, when I'm suffering, I will say, I am like Apostle Paul. I'm suffering for a higher purpose. I'm suffering through God's will. Okay, extract meaning and benefit from it. Whatever we suffer, whether we meet a bad person or have bad luck of some bad thing happen to us, we can always extract some benefit and meaning from it. Reach out to community for real support. During 9/11 or during some disaster, people naturally reach out to each other. Number 4, consider every obstacle, every failure is a stepping stone for future success. And 50, when you lose hope, look up. Seek the invisible transcendental realm with God's help. Number 6, explore new values, new directions. Dig wide, deep and wide to find a way when there's no way. Finally, when you incorporate the bad part, your trauma, your tragedy into the larger story of heroes' triumph. So the main strategy in meaning therapy is pure. Do you have a worthy purpose in your life? Do you have a deeper understanding of life purpose, of suffering? Do you take responsibility for your future, for your well-being? Do you have a deep sense of enjoyment? Enjoy that your life has significance, your life is worthwhile. So this is the approach part we emphasize. The other part, the main strategy is dealing with the negative side. The so-called avoiding system. It's not really avoiding, but avoiding system is the protective system. You accept harsh reality. You believe in positive possibility. Doesn't matter how bad things are. It will soon pass. Tomorrow might bring a better day. You commit yourself to loving, to valuing your life. You commit yourself to pursue your life goal. In the process, you discover that you are stronger than you thought. You discover that God is still performing miracles. By completing a course of striving forward and upward, you discover all kinds of miracles each day. The end result, now you can enjoy the process and the outcome. I have used this paradigm to help many clients, cancer patients, and all kinds of patients. It never fails. Now here's another way of talking about the good life. The whole picture of good life according to Mennonite therapy. A good life is represented by the golden triangle. It's a connected life, connected with your true self, your true mission, connected with others, and connected with God. A good life is a resilient life. Your courage to face reality, to accept reality, your courage to transcend and transform. A good life is a responsible life. You are accountable for your own behavior. You are accountable for your need for change. And you're determined to do the right thing. And a good life is a creative life. That means nothing can defeat you. You can always create a new path where there's no path, no path. You can always imagine and using your faith eyes to see a better future. You can also seek inspiration from God. And you know that God will make a way. Wow, you are undefeatable. So I call myself undefeatable and undefeated because I practice these 12 rules. The last one is 10 Commandments on mental health. And you can meditate on that yourself. So here I finish my talk. If you want to find out more about me, you can contact drpaulwong.com. Okay. Thank you for your attention. Bye.